Thank you very much for a way too kind introduction. So, hello, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies there? Yeah. So, I have actually to admit that I disagree with a lot of points of my previous speaker, and you will know why briefly. But first of all, so I'm going to talk about Cambrian explosion of digital assets. But before I start, I have to tell you that I came from Lisbon and I'm flying tonight to Moscow and St. Petersburg, but it's so great for me to be here with you guys, because you guys are my home. You're my home not in terms of the country. Most of you are probably here from Amsterdam, right, or from Netherlands. How many are from Netherlands here? Just raise it. Oh, most of you. But you are my home in terms of beliefs. I grew up in Western Ukraine, you know, and we went through the period of terrible hyperinflation with 10,000% of inflation for 5 years. We lost everything. We were working in a garden to survive because we didn't have a Bitcoin back then. And it was prohibited to us to purchase US dollar. It was illegal. So we could not protect our wealth, right? Nowadays, nobody can do this to people anymore because there is a Bitcoin. This is why I'm here. So, and I'm also here with you because I think Amsterdam, as much as I know, that was one of the birthplaces of Bitcoin community in Europe, right? You guys, you're one of the biggest Bitcoin meetups communities starting back in 2013 or 14, I believe, right? I want to ask you guys, how many of you know at least one other person here in the room? How well connected are you? Oh, that's amazing. And how many of you know 3 other people here in the room? So there are some real networkers. That's excellent. So I would like to invite you all, if you would like to know more about Switzerland, come to Zug. Well, Zug is Swiss Crypto Valley. We started being just 3 companies, so it was me with Xapo, there was Vitalik Buterin with Ethereum and Bitcoin Swiss. And from 3 companies, we became now like 500 companies registered, right? So that's amazing. Of course, most of them are not there. That's just a legal entity, but things are changing. More and more companies come into Crypto Valley. So, So a little bit, maybe before I start with the topic, a little bit background. So coming out of Ukraine and coming through all the hardships, I was very blessed. I got a scholarship from German government and I was allowed to study in Germany. And then I, of course, needed to prove myself and everybody else that I'm okay. Also, I'm a foreigner and have terrible accents, that I'm good enough. So I went to work for BCG and Barclays Capital and UBS and all this stuff. And actually kind of like figuring out, I'm okay. I don't have to do this shit. I'm honest, right? And I can start to do really exciting stuff. And I was very lucky. I got to meet Vences Cazares, who is, you know, founder of Xapo. And who of you know Xapo? Xapo, Bitcoin wallet? Ah, you guys are latecomers to the game. So back in 2013, Xapo was one of the first companies providing Bitcoin custody and wallet solution. And we were the first to offer a credit card, like, you know, Visa card, where you could spend your Bitcoins, right? That was exciting. And I helped Xapo in Switzerland to get regulatory permission to be basically a legal company and get a bank partners and all of the stuff. This is how I became Bitcoin Queen, because it was very difficult to convince Swiss financial regulator and authorities and everybody that we're not money laundering business, like we're really okay, we're doing KYC, all is good. So that was a tough job, but we did it. And well, after Xapo, I decided that it's time to do something on my own. And well, so we are company Smart Velour. It's not just me. There are 40 people, and we're not just working. We also have some fun because we're in Switzerland. You know, we have nice mountains, and we do mountain biking. And if any of you are still deciding to change from traditional industry into this industry, we're looking for great people. So come and talk to me. And with that, probably I will start into where I have to pull this to you, or where is the magic? Thank you. So as I mentioned before, I was born in Soviet Union, and in August 1991, I was in Soviet Union pioneer camp in Western Ukraine, and the notion reached us that there is some kind of revolt or revolution, and there are tanks on this Red Square. We didn't know much, but that was actually the beginning of the end. The end of 69-year-old experiment in social order. This was brought around by one of the most influential thinkers of the recent several hundred years, called Karl Marx. He published Capital, you know, the Das Kapital, the book that kind of explained why there's this conflict between, you know, capitalists and laborers, people that work, and that inevitably capitalists will exploit laborers to the degree where there will be a revolution. So some people, a lot of people really believed that, and you know, this is how Soviet Union became to be. But unfortunately, it didn't work out. And it didn't work out for a simple reason of, because if everything belongs to everybody, then nothing belongs to nobody. And nobody has incentives to deliver really great work and protect this ownership and to make something out of the assets that you hold. So unfortunately, the country that I was born in disappeared. And yeah, well, that's lessons learned, right? So, and the history is actually full of very interesting twists and turns in how we approach ownership. If you look at, well, we started, of course, with owning just what we have, right? Our stuffed knives and our caves, stuff like that. And the longest period of our history was actually where we owned other people, right? So several hundred years ago, 3/4 of all people were owned by other people. Like now it's crazy to imagine, right? and this, of course, was changing, and now we can own a lot of things. But the fundamental shift was achieved with with something called collective ownership, introduction of shares, right? It was actually here. It was you guys, the Dutch, the great Dutch. What was the name? Indies company. Indies. Exactly, right? And you guys had the first shares where public could own interest in the West Indies Corporation. That was the name, right? And that was the beginning of equity. And a lot of people back then were skeptical about it, like how this piece of paper can represent, you know, ownership rights, that I really own it. Can that be? Like, this is not really credible. And interestingly now, the same way back then people questioned the paper, the share, the same way today most people question digital assets, Bitcoin, protocol tokens, to say nothing about these folks here. How about them? Here's a question, guys. How many of you own this kind of stuff? Yeah, I kind of thought. So what do you think about it? Is it real asset? Like,
worth money.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I would like to talk a little bit with you, right? So it's not like Q&A at the end. It's like, you know, Andreas Antonopoulos style. So here's my question. When when people ask you, so you own the thing, is this real? Is it real asset? What's your answer?
This is yes, like it's first thing is like it's worth money. That's the first thing. It has liquidity somehow, and even like through the philosophical thing, like it's something that is fully owned by me, my wallet, my control, sent to my friends, and we have like this group that we actually keep trading these cryptokitties exactly with like these things. And it is it.
But do you guys think this is it, or will we see a lot of different kind of assets like this, like purely digital assets?
Why not? No, it's just personal view, but I think it really depends on definition of assets, right? What is value? Who decides the value? If it means something for you, then it has value. And if you believe that, then everything's possible.
Exactly. And in that case, this is just art, right? It's some kind of digital art where just ownership ledger is recorded on the blockchain and it's paid in cryptocurrency. But it's basically art, right? And I think this is marking a very interesting, very important milestone in the way, what is asset, what can we own, what is the thing, what is the value. I need your help. Maybe one back. Yeah, so we are basically just starting into this, continuum of digital assets, right? And today you see a lot of interesting example what is tokenized, right? So maybe it's easier to keep this aside, like there are native digital assets that do not exist in any other form. They're just a token, right? That they're pure natural form. And then there are a lot of assets that are tokenized and they become digital assets, right? Like real estate, like gold, like art, like shares in the companies, right? ICOs. Well, and of course the other continuum. So, and the most important point here is that, if you could, yeah, thank you, that the new way of, I need to be in control. That makes me nervous. So the whole, like, the way how we own things will define what we own, right? And I'm not speaking here for Ledger. I mean, we are partner with Ledger. We are implementing their enterprise-grade vault solution. But I mean, it will not be a Ledger, right? It will be some part of some kind of small thing probably in us that is just kind of like protecting and saving all of your assets, right? But the point is, like, it's digital ownership saved in a digital way. And with that, we are moving one milestone further, right? So we are going from this physical, physical individual ownership to collective ownership through electronic ownership, and now we are talking about tokenization. And why tokenization is actually important, that just doesn't want to play with me, is that things that we could never own before, we can own them now, right? So this is why, like, for example, this picture or any kind of like Picasso, good Picasso picture is $50 million worth, right? Can you afford it? I can't. So, but now we can, because this thing can be tokenized. So 50 million picture will be represented through 50 million picture X token, and everybody can buy one token, right? Fractional ownership. And then the most important thing is that we can also create a secondary market. So it's not just initial purchase. You can also then later on trade and exchange ownership in this asset. So that means that with tokenization of assets, we are creating a secondary markets and more liquidity in asset classes that never had secondary market and never had liquidity and never gave access to broader a range of investors to it. One question to you guys: if you would tokenize something, what would you do? From the real world assets, what do you think? What is the most interesting asset to be tokenized?
Buildings.
Real estate. Yeah. And this is a great one because, again, secondary market liquidity, right? I can sell and buy this token in Trump building, right? Without selling the whole building. What else?
Fresh air.
Huh?
Fresh air.
Fresh air. Oh, that's an unusual one. Never heard about this one. Very creative. Any other suggestion?
Commons, like the rainforest, CO2 pollution. You can tokenize this in a converse element.
Exactly.
So that you can track.
I just met guys that are doing this. Amazing. Trees. So you can tokenize a new planted tree in some forests in Latin America. Amazing stuff. On the back?
You can tokenize money with like a fiat money. So you can tokenize money like fiat money.
I'll come to
That's,
that. My favorite. Thank you. Something else? How about passion? Guys, what are you passionate about? Apart from Bitcoin. How about music? Is here somebody who likes Rihanna or Coldplay? How about imagine he would be just at the very beginning of his career and he would struggle to get off the ground. But you would know him, he's a friend of yours and you like his music and you want to support him. Wouldn't it be great if he could tokenize the revenues from his future, whatever he will make, and give you part of it because you supported him now?
Isn't that almost the same as slavery? Aren't you essentially selling yourself if you are selling your future revenue to other people? Isn't that extremely dangerous?
So did you compare this with slavery, or?
Essentially, you are selling your future economic output to other people, which is essentially what slavery is like.
Yeah, this is great because
I mean,
when you're
you have-
young, you're broke, right?
Yeah, okay, so I don't know, I think that's morally extremely objectionable, but maybe that's just me.
I totally agree. I actually think, that almost all of us, we have very specific knowledge in certain domains, right? And we have passion, we have feelings. But when it comes to investments, we kind of kill all of this, we forget it, and we go and invest in pension funds and mutual funds. But can't there be an area where the passion and your knowledge can be put to make money, right? Investing in startups. If you know something about healthcare, now you can participate in ICO of a great healthcare company. Yesterday I saw one in Lisbon. They are making sure that pills are authentical and that children in developing countries are not dying from their own pills. And if you understand this whole thing, right, you can tell from this ICO, and this ICO, you can tell very good who is bullshit, right, and who is not. And I think this is the point that was kind of not so obvious to me, is that I came to realize that, the legal environment around investing and protection of consumers that was created some 30, 50 years ago, it did not took into consideration the creation of internet, that now we can all get educated about what is this and how is that and how this works, right? So I'm a big proponent of, opening up regulation and giving more power to people. That's a different topic. So let's move on. Yes, so this is my call. Yes, we can. Today we can educate ourselves about opportunities. We can take educated investment decisions. And it's not just Wall Street, and it's not just mutual funds guys who will decide how to invest our money. We can do it ourselves. And I bet many of you do that right? How many of you invest and make the decisions yourself, not your bankers? Yes, yes, like 80%, right? So I'm very much on your side. I invested in Bitcoin almost everything that I had. And this is how I started my company, because then Bitcoin did this and we had enough capital to get started. Yeah, so to me, a big inspiration was actually Milton Friedman, because in '91 he said that, you know, the biggest balance of power has happened with internet, and now we only need digital money. But I'm sure that will be invented very soon. That's dangerous here, my goodness. So if I fall down, I hope somebody will jump up. So, and he said that, guys, think about it, like almost 20 years before Bitcoin was invented. This is great. Unfortunately, he did not live to see the Bitcoin rise, right? He died before Satoshi Nakamoto published the white paper. But I think actually the third thing that we needed, that we need, internet, digital money, but then this digital ownership, the tokenized value, right? The internet of value, blockchain. This is the third part of the equation. And this equation is a true shift in a balance of power between people and state, Wall Street and startups, establishment and us. And I think we are all very, very fortunate to live in this time and be part of it. So, I think I need to give it up. And this is actually a huge business opportunity also, because tokenized assets, well, it's going to be a big, big business. There are a lot of different predictions. For example, World Economic Forum says that in 10 years' time, 10% of GDP will be stored on the blockchain. So in 10 years, if you kind of try to calculate numbers, well, we will be with GDP 150, 160 trillion. So 10%, who can still count? Who is not sleeping? 10% of 160? Very good, thank you so much. You're actually a great audience. I don't see anybody who is sleeping. Normally I always have like 1 to 2 people that are sleeping. Mostly Asian, because they're in jet lag. So thank you very much for staying awake. So if you think about it, guys, 16 trillion. Okay, in 10 years, who knows? But if you look at the size, and my previous speakers was speaking about the, you remember the bubble slide, right? The bubble slide. So real assets today we have over 200 trillion in real estate, 85 trillion in equities, right? So those are huge, huge asset classes, right? Imagine just a fraction of those assets being tokenized. What will it mean for the market cap of tokenized assets that we're now talking in crypto, like, I don't know, 300 billion, right? It's a joke. My prediction is we will see very soon 4 or 5 trillion market cap in what we call crypto. We will not call it crypto, we will call it digital assets. And a lot of them will be on the blockchain. But the question is, how do we get from what we have today into this digital world? Well, welcome to the world of Smart Velour. This is what we are building. We are building a marketplace for tokenized alternative investments. Who of you knows what alternative investments stand for? Who is a banker? Any bankers here? Oh my goodness, no bankers. I cannot believe it. In Switzerland, if you ask this question, like 80% raise their hands. Okay, so in financial terms, alternative assets is everything that is not equity, bonds, or cash products, right? So venture capital, private equity, private companies, real estate, this is all alternative investments. And common to all of these assets is one thing, that they are less liquid and they are very, very difficult to access, because there are big stakes if you want to be limited partner in a good venture capital fund, you might need something around 1 million just to get in, right? The same with real estate, right? You need a lot of money. And the problem is that it's very difficult to build a diversified portfolio of alternative investments with small money. With 500,000, you can do anything, right? So I used to work at UBS Wealth Management. I used to run Central and Eastern Europe distribution, and we used to say that, well, if you want to have a diversified portfolio in alternatives, you should come with like at least 2 million. And the tokenization is changing this. Why? Why? Because of... Yes! Oh, guys, you're amazing. You're not sleeping. You're very smart. And not sleeping. The combination of two. So yes, so this is a big deal for investments, right? Because it will democratize access to investments into wealth. Because even people with lower net worth, they will be able to access those alternative investments. So what we do, Smart Velour platform, very simple. Remember two things. We tokenize, right? So we write your smart contracts to issue your token backed by your real estate development project or venture capital fund or your company shares, right? So we tokenize, and then the second thing, we distribute, right? And distribution of tokenized stuff, right? This is then security tokens, and this distribution of securities is a little bit more difficult than distribution of utility tokens, as you can imagine, right? Because we are back to old regulations that is now regulating how IPOs are done and how you distribute, ownership in your company. I need your help. Yes. So on our platforms there will be different types of tokenized assets. We just announced several of them. So of course we are working on venture capital, tokenization of venture capital funds. So this is an amazing opportunity because space used to be a privilege of billionaires, Elon Musks, and big investors. But these folks are doing the space fund, funding startups, investing in technology for, well, basically colonization of our next frontier. Very exciting stuff, and something like that would never be accessible to us, right? And now it will. And another tokenization project, somebody said currency. Well, this is right. We are basically started work on tokenization of Swiss franc. Guys, anybody knows why Swiss franc? How is Swiss franc different from US dollar? Again, question to bankers.
Low inflation.
Very good. So low inflation. Actually, if you look at the last 15 years, US dollar lost 77% of value in comparison to Swiss franc. So Swiss franc is real stable value, right? This is what is a high priority for the government, stable currency, right? Safe haven for the world. Any other ideas? Not anymore. Well, it's very stable, and it has basically status of safe haven currency. And economists here probably know what it means, safe haven currency. It's kind of like when in the world economy everything goes down the drain, then this currency is rising in value, right? It's kind of like troubleshooter, right? And we actually did not plan this, but on our platform we have all these liquid assets, right? And we developed a set of smart contract based auctions in which you can kind of like trade these less liquid assets. And for this smart contract based auction to work, you basically need both things in the form of token. You need asset in the form of token, and you need money in the form of token, right? For the for program to run and settle it all automatically. So of course we are tokenizing real assets, but we don't have this tokenized money. We can't use Bitcoin to settle the trades, right? And back then there was also no good alternatives. It was just Tether, which is a joke, right? And you know, we can't use US dollar on our Swiss franc nominated platform, right? And nobody was doing this, so we came up with the idea, okay, so let's do this. And we do it with all the banks. It just provides the infrastructure, right? We issue the token, you bank, you tell us, well, your client decided to now transform their Swiss franc into tokenized Swiss franc, right? And we issue for you this Swiss franc, and they are always 100% backed, and you freeze the funds, right? And with this, guys, that's quite amazing. What you achieve is that the money from banks can travel in the form of token through our platform or through other platforms into, for example, crypto-only exchanges, right? So you as a customer of Swiss Bank, of UBS, no, not UBS, of course, but a smaller private bank that is participating in our network, you can now, from your bank deposit, go into some kind of like crypto-only exchange and buy Dash and whatever you want, right? And the big advantage of this is that IML and KYC is done in the same way as for banks, right? So we are creating a compliant digital money. We don't have time to go deep enough. That would be just 2 hours, just that topic. But if you're interested, talk to me about it. I really love it. So, okay, so on our platform, diversification of portfolio, don't need a fortune, follow your passion. You can invest in, and you can do all of this yourself. You don't need a banker. I really like it. I was a banker myself. You don't need them. Okay, so maybe the next slide. Well, the Smart Velour, what is it built of? This is basically a cryptocurrency exchange on the back. This is up and running. This is live. There is a Smart Velour protocol, which is basically used for whitelisting of wallets, because we are going anyway in the direction of decentralized exchange. This is a big future, and we already started to work also with other protocol providers on this functionality. And of course, there is a storage solution. This one we are doing jointly with Ledger, right? So Smart Velour Vault. So this is the tech behind it. This is for people who is in tech here, and I learned you're 1/3 of people here. Any questions for this? Yes, please.
So one property of native currencies, native digital currencies like Bitcoin and Ether, is that they're not dependent on geography, not dependent on jurisdictions, not dependent on who you are in nationality. That's all different with securities and also tokenized securities. So all of the inefficiencies you have the old system actually remain the same if you represent securities on a digital ledger. So I'm just wondering, what is the advantage then?
That's a very good question. I think the advantage is, part of the advantage, there are a lot of advantages, and part of them will be realized now, and part of them will be realized later. Now, what do I mean? For example, very simple, no-brainer thing is that settlement on the blockchain happens almost instantly, right? If you go through the exchange and broker-dealer and bank and all these intermediaries, that's a lot of organization involved, and all of this reconciliation of their centralized ledgers between them results in what we know as a 2 to 3 day execution, right? Settlement period, right? So on the blockchain, we don't have that, right? It can be settled almost instantly. So if the asset is moving instantly, right, that creates a better liquidity, right? More people can participate in that, and more fractional ownership. So on the technology side, it creates a lot of advantages, right? On the regulatory side, for now, they're limited, but this is changing, right? And with that, thank you very much for a great question.
Can I ask
like
a follow-up question? Because so in Switzerland, you have an equivalent of what we have in the EU as Euroclear. And so every asset, as far as I know, needs to be registered by Euroclear in the EU and by that equivalent Swiss organization called SIX, I think. So if you tokenize securities, you're still bound to SIX.
No.
No. Okay, I would be curious how that works, but
Yes.
that's
This is how it works. This is the future. In Switzerland and in Liechtenstein, guys started to work on a new blockchain regulation. And this regulation in Liechtenstein, it's known as a Blockchain Act, virtual assets. And they are completely changing the, well, basically the civil law. What is ownership? How ownership is transferred? How ownership is recorded? Who is in charge of that, right? They're working on the different instances and legal frameworks for tokenization of assets. In Liechtenstein, they're introducing something called physical validator. So if we are, for example, asset issuer, so, well, basically you asset issuer, you bring your gold, your company, your fund, whatever you have, you bring it to us, we issue a token, right? We distribute it, but this other organization is a physical validator. So they will go and look, is the house there? Is the picture there? Is it real? So some countries are really moving forward into creating a new legal framework for these tokenized assets and how they are distributed. We at Smart Velour, because I was at XAPO in charge of all this, regulation stuff, and I kind of proved that it's possible to talk to regulator and to create new rules. So the same we are doing now with Smart Velour. We already received a financial intermediary in Switzerland. We received, sorry, there is a mistake. It's probably just misrepresented. It was all right on my slides. Some kind of mess. So in Liechtenstein, we received a confirmation that we can operate as an exchange, crypto fiat exchange, and we applied for a banking license in Liechtenstein. And banking license, well, it's kind of not the big one. It's like limited banking license. We will not do loans and all of the stuff, right? We just do distribution of tokenized assets, of security tokens, right? But this one will enable us to do this legally, right? To distribute to collect deposits from 27 European countries, because Liechtenstein is part of the European Economic Zone, and distribute tokenized assets, right? So it's kind of like, yes, we are back to this world, but there are new ways to do it. And they will be much more efficient than the way banks are offering their mutual funds and pensions funds today. Any other question to this one? Yes, please. Should I?
Want to take a mic?
Gonna be dangerous.
Aren't you a bit afraid to flood the market with too much liquidity? And how long do you think it will take for, let's say, stock markets to adapt to this like 24/7 exchanges and full liquidity? Because we're now used to, exchanges close and open, and there's like a whole cycles around that.
Yeah, that's a very good question. I think, I worked in the banks and I saw how difficult it is to move a big organization. And of course they also realized there are like crazy numbers, 25 billion will be savings per year if they substitute settlement on chain, right? But guys, until this happens, this is like 3-5 years in the timeline, right? It's like massive change for IT infrastructure, and in banks, like CIOs, they don't think like this. They don't, innovation as such, it's not the goal, right? Thing is working, right? The IT systems are working, and this is good. That's good enough, right? So I think it will take a lot of time, right, for banks and exchanges to move on chain, right? And also tech needs to be developed. As you pointed out before, I totally agree. It's not yet there, right? The whole topic of more faster proof of stakes, interoperability between the blockchains. This all needs to be solved, and I think we're in a good way, right? It just will take a while, obviously. This is for banks, and for us, I don't think that just because it's token, there will be perfect liquidity and there will be flood of liquidity. No, it will be more liquid, right? And with the auctions and with the dark pools and with all, special market mechanism, we will create liquidity, but it will not be perfect. Any other questions?
Okay, we'll do a couple more questions. Go ahead.
Thank you for the nice presentation. Could you explain how it would work if I want to tokenize my real estate here in Amsterdam, my apartment, and then trade it on an exchange in Liechtenstein, and then the Dutch government accepts that someone else has ownership on my apartment here without any Dutch notary verifying it? So how does the system change? Because I see that the exchange and the tokenization is kind of localized, as previous speaker said, to Liechtenstein and Switzerland. So how does it work with assets in Philippines?
So in the very simplified terms, I will not go into too much details here.
Yeah.
Basically, what you can do, you can create a special purpose vehicle, investment vehicle that owns just this asset, right? And the special purpose vehicle, this company, that can issue shares, right? Let's call them shares, right? And those are the tokens, right? So basically, in the legal terms, there is a structure that is between your apartment and that asset, right? And look, it's basically the same as funds. What is venture capital fund? Well, it's shares of 20 startup companies, right? And those shares are held by special purpose vehicle, right?
If I go to the Dutch government and actually make a company and distribute shares to people that are not accredited investors, and these shares represent my house ownership, I'm getting to a legal, I need notaries, lawyers, etc., etc. Doesn't this defeat the purpose of blockchain and tokenization?
Well, again, it depends how you do it, right? And it's, it's very different asset class by asset class and how you do it. Of course, if you just sell your apartment to 10 people, it's very different than if you sell a Trump Empire State Building or something like that to hundreds of people, right? And there is certain definitions what is security and what is not security in different countries, right? It's just like, some countries will provide a better framework to do a lot of the things. And none of this exists yet, right? So we are running the pilots with the real estate, with the Swiss franc, right? So this is something that is done for the first time. And if you guys, any of you have an idea or know somebody who wants to tokenize something, please come and talk to me. But we can engage into more detailed conversation later. Let me maybe just finish this by saying that, it works or it doesn't, no. That the vision behind Smart Velour is that we would like to be basically kind of like Amazon for alternative investments, where investing in any kind of alternative investments, real assets, is as easy and secure and actually pleasant experience as just buying a book on Amazon store, where people, no matter where they are and from where they are, they can own anything. Wouldn't that be freedom? And with that, I would like to invite you to join our early access program. We built the platform. Everything is in place. Now, before we launch, we're inviting 5,000 people, early users. We always need early adopters, right? To come on the platform, go through KYC process, see how it works, look at tokenization machine. Tell us, what don't you like? What we should improve? How this should work, suggest asset issuers, write performance reviews. There is so many things to be done, right? And, well, we pay in our own currency, VALOR token. Now we have this privilege of having our own currency. It used to be only governments and big corporations. And you get, of course, some bits of it for registering at early program. And my last point, and then I'm completely done, is that, guys, I think that all of this would not be possible without something called ICO. And a lot of people now ashamed to talk about ICO. I'm happy to talk about it. Because, guys, me as a woman, being in Switzerland, I would have no chance whatsoever to create this company. Because in Switzerland, there are no VCs. nobody would give me money because I'm woman and Silicon Valley does not invest in women. There are less than 3% women in management positions in startups funded by VCs, right? And this is actually a democratization of funding and finance, right? And yes, this is the only way for us to get money. And luckily, that was a big surprise. Already 8 VC companies gave us money, and we already raised 5 million. But to have a banking license, to run all of this, to start the program, to put out the whole thing out publicly, to do the marketing, of course we need more. So this is why currently the last round of pre-sale of VALOR token is open. And I would really, really appreciate if you could support us with whatever is possible. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention, and I will be around later if you would like to talk to me.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much.